Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all of you on the panel for your expertise and for being a part of this hearing, a very, very important issue that I think a lot of us have talked about and shared for a long time. We all know that unsustainable debt has placed this country on a collision course with financial disaster, and that a balanced budget amendment might save us from that fate. And I would really like to hear our witnesses on what factors they think make a strong, balanced budget amendment that does not bear any unintended consequences. As a freshman here, I've had the opportunity to look at 6 different constitutional amendments that have been introduced in this 119th Congress. And I want to start by addressing the issue of when a balanced budget ought to take effect. And Mr. Couchman, what are the pros of a balanced budget amendment taking effect for the budget year immediately after it's ratified?
To require balance of the budget immediately would require relatively large changes in spending and revenue policies. It would not give people as much time to adapt and plan, which is why I recommend 10 years, a glide path of 10 years after ratification, which would probably take 2 to 3 years.
Okay, because I understand of the 6 that have been introduced, only 1 gives Congress time to pass the balanced budget, and the other 5 require Congress to pass the balanced budget the fiscal year after the amendment's adopted. And some balanced budget amendments have provisions that allow deficit spending during a declared war, national security threats, or natural disasters. And Mr. Couchman, should a balanced budget amendment contain these exceptions, in your opinion?
Yes, sir. Every balanced budget requirement or debt limit requirement must have a safety valve. There are emergencies of many types that come up. 2/3 is the standard supermajority for congressional action in the Constitution. 3/4 does apply, but that's only in the context of ratifying proposed amendments.
Okay, and Mr. Walker, what about you?
Clearly, it cannot be effective immediately. In my view, I prefer a debt-to-GDP approach where you do 2 things. 1, you set a credit card limit, which is constitutional, not the debt ceiling, which is a bad joke. Secondly, you have a target of lower debt-to-GDP than today, because we're already too high, 10 to 15 years out, with specific targets, triggers, to be able to make sure that we get there. But doing it immediately makes no sense. We need to really have a phased-in approach.
Okay. And we all know, and this has already been alluded to today, that there are 2 ways to balance the budget: raise taxes or cut spending. And Mrs. Madney, could you explain, you made a great point in your opening comments about the spending, not revenue, as a problem that needs to be addressed. Can you expand on that a little more?
Absolutely, sir. I think that the answer is quite simple. When we're looking at the math, we know that revenues are not catching up to where we are in terms of outlays. To me, that indicates that the federal government is spending more than we bring in. Every constituent that you have sits around their dinner table and is expected to balance their budget and figure out what they can actually spend within their means. We are quite simply not doing that as a country, and the result of that is that our deficit is ballooning. We're increasing our debt year after year. There are several instances of rampant waste that I think that the average American would be astounded to learn about. For example, there are several $1 billion worth of waste going to things like green energy projects in Honduras, climate resilience in Honduras. I think it's about $24 million. Simple items like this actually do stack up. And then when you start to think about the last major welfare reform, which your colleague Ms. Jayapal pointed out was a significant part of the president's 1996 balance, what you see there is that he actually did also contribute significant energy to reducing spending. It has to be a part of the picture. Then it was about $100 billion in today's dollars worth of spending cut to welfare. Now, in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, about $1 trillion of that is what we're seeing. And it's really important to note that Medicaid is still growing after the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. There's a significant impact. In fact, it grows 31% even after the reforms in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So it's not that revenues are the problem, it's that the spending trajectory of the country is continuing to go far beyond the pace of what we could ever bring in.
Gotcha. Well, thank you very much. And I think we saw some of that in the first few months of this administration when DOGE began to do its work, where the American public was rising up and saying that these cuts were something that needed to happen. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.